All right, let's get right into it. We're going to dive into this absolutely incredible story. It's all about power, strategy, and yeah, the fall of a king. So, in the wild, an empire doesn't just fade away. No, it happens with a roar, it happens with teeth, and it happens with claws. And that brings us right here, the Sabi Sand Reserve, March 16th, 2012. This is the exact time and place where one of the most brutal, most legendary reigns in lion history just came to a crashing, dramatic end. And look at the matchup here. One king against four challengers. But this wasn't just some random brawl. Oh no. This was a tactical execution, a planned takedown that was going to change the entire landscape of power out there forever. But, to really get why this takedown was so huge, we have to rewind a bit. You've got to understand the legend they were up against, who they were actually trying to topple. So we're talking about the Mopogo coalition. And listen, these weren't just any lions. This was a super coalition, a band of 6 brothers that literally rewrote the rules of survival in the Sabi Sand. They came to power through just unbelievable sheer force. And for a solid 6 years, their name was whispered with this mix of total awe and absolute terror. And right at the heart of that terror was one lion who was more infamous than all the rest combined. Mr. T. I mean, people called him Satan. His ferocity was just legendary. That iconic mohawk mane, for a lot of his rivals, that was the last thing they ever saw. He wasn't just a killer. He was an executioner, plain and simple. But no empire lasts forever, right? And you can see the cracks starting to form right here. After years of just total dominance, things started to fall apart from the inside. Internal rivalries literally split the coalition. Then, a huge blow. His brother, Kinky Tail, gets killed by a rival group. That forced Mr. T himself to retreat. So by the time we get to March 2012, the once unstoppable mopogo, well, they're just a shadow of what they were, down to only 3 aging members. So while the old kings were starting to falter, you better believe there were new contenders on the rise. And they were watching. They were learning. And most importantly, they were waiting. Enter the Salati coalition. These 4 males, sometimes called the Southern Pride males, were a different breed altogether. Their strength wasn't just about brute force. It came from their incredible unity and their hunting skill. I mean, as nomads, they perfected their craft, becoming absolute specialists at hunting one of the toughest, most dangerous animals in Africa, the Cape buffalo. That takes serious teamwork. And this is key. They weren't just a bunch of brawlers, they were strategists, and they were forged in the fire of a really brutal defeat. See, they had an early run-in with another powerful coalition, the Majingalain, and it cost them one of their brothers. That taught them a lesson they'd never forget. Brute force alone just isn't enough. And that lesson led to this. This quote right here really captures their entire philosophy from that point on. To wait. Patience became their ultimate weapon. So they backed off, they retreated, they got stronger, and they just watched. They watched the power shift, waiting, just waiting for that one perfect moment to make their move. So the stage was perfectly set, right? It's the classic showdown, the old guard versus the new blood. You've got the Mopogo, aging, battle-worn, totally fractured by all their infighting. And then you have the Salati, young, in their prime, completely unified, and crucially, a strategic force that had learned from its past mistakes. In all of that, every single piece of it brings us right back to March 16th, 2012, the day that patience finally met its perfect opportunity. So here's the scene. Mr. T is completely isolated from his last 2 brothers. We don't know exactly where Makulu and Pretty Boy were, but they weren't there. And true to his absolute legend, the old king, he refused to back down. Even facing 4 prime males, impossible odds, he stood his ground, alone. And this is where things get really fascinating, because this was not a chaotic brawl. It was a disciplined, tactical assault. The Salatis used this brilliant and, brutal strategy. They isolated him. Then 2 distracted him from the front, while the other 2 hit him from the flanks, attacking his spine, his hindquarters. Then they pull back and do it again. It was a classic pincer movement, military style, but happening right there in the bush. Yeah, check this out. This chart breaks down their method perfectly. It was all about using teamwork to dismantle a more powerful individual enemy, piece by piece. You see it here, isolate him first. Then this rotational harassment, short, vicious 10 to 20-second attacks to wear him down without tiring themselves out. The goal, that targeted spinal bite. Once they achieved that, his hind legs were paralyzed, and from there, it was over. The legend was defeated by pure, coordinated strategy. So, the death of Mr. T. I mean, this wasn't just the end of one lion. This was a seismic event, a true changing of the guard. Think about it. For 6 years, the mopogo were the undisputed kings. 6 years. And that entire reign of terror ended in a single afternoon. Everything they took years to build was completely dismantled in just a few hours, all thanks to superior tactics. And that's really why this matters so much. His fall sent these massive ripple effects across the entire Sabi-Sand. The Salati victory, it just kicked off a whole new chapter for every lion in the region. Territories got redrawn, prides were taken over, a whole new dynasty began, and it all traces back to this one single decisive battle. You know, as one observer, Adam Bannister, wrote just a few weeks after the fight, we are in the midst of yet another changing of the guard. Everyone on the ground there, they knew. They knew they were watching history being made. This wasn't just something to see, it was a fundamental shift in the very fabric of their world. So it all leaves you with this one big question, doesn't it? In the kingdom of lions, is any throne ever truly safe? The story of Mr. T and the Salati coalition is just this powerful, powerful reminder about the nature of power itself. It shows us that even the most dominant, feared ruler can be brought down, not just by raw strength, but by smart strategy, by patience, and by the relentless ambition of those just waiting in the wings for their chance.